This is information
Here.
about
Sheriff Phil Wowak.
the nature of the sheriff and the nature of the situation that we're currently facing as far as the smart meters, the smart grid, and the recall. This is in the context of 9/11 and everything that's going on in the worldwide wars and the creation of the smart grid, which is going on all over the world right now. Okay, this is coming under the auspice. The creation of the United Nations was an early stage of this. Everything that's happening now is happening in the context of this movement that took off right after World War II. These guys decided to form the United Nations at this conference. They decided on the structure of the Security Council, which is essential to the non-democratic nature of the United Nations. Agenda 21 was already in their minds when this happened. Okay, the Department of Homeland Security, created after 9/11. Websites with Homeland Security were being registered in 2000 and in early 2001. Michael Chertoff, the Bushes, and many federal insiders were involved in intelligence activities and planning that were tied to the events of 9/11. And this is not appearing the way it's supposed to, but that's the way it's going to be.
Oh, wow.
This is happening under the auspices of the Joint Terrorism Task Forces. Phil Wowak is fully involved in Joint Terrorism Task Forces. He doesn't mention this at all. He's, in the context of this, he's had discussions about the smart meters with the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the people associated with that. You can bet on it. Law enforcement is being militarized in the United States right now. This is all local police. 1981, Reagan passed the Military Cooperation with Law Enforcement Act. In 1994, the Pentagon was authorized to donate supposedly surplus, which it wasn't, military equipment to sheriffs and police departments all across the United States. In the first 3 years alone, police were given M16s, M14s, grenade launchers, and 112 armored personnel carriers. It's now a mark of prestige to have a tank or an armored personnel carrier for your department or your sheriff. SWAT deployments in the United States may top 60,000 a year. In 2000, it was 40,000 a year. It's gone up 20,000 deployments a year since the year 2000. The police are being conditioned. He's a former police chief, and he says there's an alarming increase in conditioning of police to view civilians as the enemy. That's a quote from him. Okay, one website has recorded over 400 deaths for police uses of tasers, including the tasering and beating of Kelly Thomas and Fullerton, which was absolutely brutal, and they're having a heck of a time, even with the entire community mobilized, getting any accountability from the police department in Fullerton.
Wow.
Many police all over the country now think that they are authorized to arrest people for filming them or just taking a picture of them with their cell phone camera in public, and it's happening. And then they're released, charges are dropped, and they're apologized to, but the impetus for the police to do that is increasing.
Conditioning.
This is an article from the Washington Times 2 days ago. Obama okays $3.4 billion for the smart power grid. What's happening with these smart meters is part of an international and obviously national policy. It's extremely important for this to take place. So Phil Wowak is under the gun from this program. It's obvious.
Yeah.
Did you receive that, Margaret?
This is a slide from Patrick Wood's Technocracy presentation. These are Patrick Wood from August Review. We showed it at the Freedom Forum. We showed the movie at the Freedom Forum the other night.
It's not Patrick Wood, the former FERC commissioner.
No. He's a libertarian.
Okay.
This was at the Eagle Forum up near Sacramento. So these are the engineering requirements for technocracy that came out in 1932. So register continuous 24-hour per day, the total net conversion of energy. Incidentally, energy under technocracy is supposed to be the new money form.
Currency.
By means of registration of energy, converted and consumed, make possible a balanced load. Provide a continuous inventory of all production and consumption. All production and consumption. This is not just power. It's everything done in society. Provide specific registration of the type, kind, etc. of all goods and services, where produced and where used. Provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual, plus a record and description of the individual.
That's the spy meters. That's it.
DARPA has been putting out requests for quotes for years for people to do computer programming in order to create these databases. They plan to have a biography of every single citizen from the cradle to the grave. This will include your location, every moment of your life as much as possible, every email you ever sent, every website you ever visit.
And tracking by cell phone.
And tracking by cell phone, tracking by every means possible. Tracking by spy satellites, ultimately. So this was planned in 1932, and of course they didn't have the capability of doing this, but they have been moving in this direction now for 80 years. This is an article, a really wonderful article from a blogger, in which he lives in Salt Lake County, and they created in Salt Lake the Unified Police Department of Greater Salt Lake, and this, the Salt Lake Valley Law Enforcement Service Area. These are two corporations which were created by the County Council of Salt Lake. And this guy, in 2010, he officially stopped being the Sheriff of Salt Lake County and started being the CEO of a private company. This is a private company. And they completely are open about that.
Property means.
How did the Salt Lake County privatization happen? In 1996, the Utah Highway Safety Office and the Sheriff's Office met, and they got together with all of these agencies, a multi-agency task force comprised of all local, county, and state law enforcement agencies from schools and universities, and representatives from 4 other government agencies. In 1996, and then in 2000, it took them 14 years to get to the point where they created this private sheriff's organization.
So it's like a subset of the sheriff's office, or it's a complete replacement?
It's a complete replacement.
Privatized.
Those same exercises have been going on here under the guise of seatbelt registration and certain times after holidays and so forth, but all of those are coordinated, whether it's the campus police, the sheriff, or anybody. This fusion activity has been going on under ICLEI, and the newspapers lie about it, and most of the people are totally
We're going to
ignorant.
discuss it, right?
Absolutely, and they have plans and punch lists and committees that are figuring out what the next moves are going to be happening all the time. So they created this special financing district.
It's a UPD.
It's like redevelopment.
The United Police Department of Salt Lake.
Okay.
So they created this special financing district. The special financing district issues fees. They send out fee statements to everybody in Salt Lake County. Well, the fee statement has no legal standing whatsoever, but if you don't pay the fee statement, it goes to collections, and then they can put a lien on your property. So they are creating taxation without representation.
Yeah.
And this is going on all over the country.
What's
Red
the
tape.
website? Something net? Is it CSDA?
CSDA.net.
Okay.
So this company helps counties to create these organizations.
Now, special districts, that's what I used to do that too. A lot of them can't afford their own police department. So a lot of special districts for a long time had privatized security apparatuses. So I wouldn't say, because it's the special districts, that I see...
That district is issuing fees for the services of the United Police Department in Salt Lake. And if you go to this article that the guy created...
The association's paying fees?
Yes, they're paying,
The association doesn't have any police.
No, the United Police Department is all the police departments of all of Salt Lake County. They're all merged.
No, I understand what's going on. You're talking about a different state. I'm saying in California, they could do it, but it's more likely it'd be like They use a
It took
redevelopment
them-
agency.
It took them 14 years to create the structure to do that.
The
But
financing
but they
structure.
did it in the end.
They had to create a financing
Right,
structure.
right.
Okay, to
But
pay
you
for
can
it.
bet people are
Which is
doing
the
that.
banks, the same banks we're talking about, the investment bankers and hedge funds that rule the planet. They're essentially the same. In our county, they're using redevelopment to do the same thing.
Yeah, but redevelopment's dead now, so they're gonna have other things to do anyway.
Well, in Monterey Bay,
So
they're
anyway, the
using
same activity, they
AMBAG,
just
which is
rename
an
the activity.
association,
Yeah.
and they're getting direct federal money, and they're taking away our sovereignty from our city council and our supervisors, because they're making policy at the AMBAG meetings. They don't report that in the newspaper,
Nope.
and the representatives from each city council and each supervisor that attends doesn't report to the committee as a whole during those meetings. They don't show it. And you've got to attend those meetings, and you'll know that we're being seduced and self-government has been taken away from us systematically.
All we got is free speech.
So this is a
For
report.
now.
This is a report from Manta.com, who gets their information from Dun & Bradstreet. And according to them, according to Dun & Bradstreet, the United Police Department of Greater Salt Lake is a private company categorized under police departments. So special financing districts are corporate entities. They're imaginary shells created and run outside of public accountability. Yeah.
We found that on that Manda.com that Santa Cruz County, as well as many other California counties, are listed in the same thing.
Yes, and they are
And they're
private
like,
companies.
they're saying they're
Corporation.
admitting that they are corporate, private companies.
They are private
Yep.
companies. A couple of years ago, a man named John Harris revealed over in England that all of the county councils, all of the police departments, all over England are private companies.
Yeah.
Doing business under various different shells. Many times their corporate officers are doing business as those private companies. They have shareholders, and all of this is completely hidden from public view.
I made a phone call to find it, to get that verified with the sheriff, and she never returned my call.
Right.
So it's completely hidden. They can't talk to you about that. Okay, the special districts are given power to assess fees which, if not paid, essentially become taxes through liens on people's property. And they are taking people's property away. It's a de facto third layer of government. They're creating a completely hidden, privately controlled, public-private partners government, which actually can attach public revenue. And I don't know if we're able to see this. The special financing districts are found in all U.S. states and counties. In many counties, there will be a dozen of these things acting in various capacities. Okay, this is the guy who wrote the blog post. These special service and tax districts are incrementally taking over our government one function at a time. Like a pie chart with thousands and thousands of slices, traditional government is disappearing as this special district scheme plays out across the country, and the takeover of America's infrastructure and public departments happens one area at a time.
Was that Reality Blogger? Is that what that said? That website?
If you're interested, send me, or you have email.
Yeah,
In any
I
case.
know.
Yeah,
I'll just pay you a visit. I still want to give you a copy of
he
that.
he actually did an interview with the sheriff, in which the sheriff admitted that his department is one of these special districts.
Really?
The last two sheriffs have been appointed on the resignation of their predecessors in the middle of their elected terms. And then they were elected, in one case with a very weak opposition candidate, in the case of Wowak, unopposed.
So that's how they're getting in their boys.
So they just keep the program going.
Recall.
Though they seem to be officially elected, there is some evidence that the sheriff, Phil Wowak, is actually an officer in a private corporation.
Wow.
Find out. and I'll
Lower
sue 'em.
level sheriff's
That's an
officers
issue.
also
Whoever
seem
the suit.
to be on the board of this corporation slash district. County of Santa Cruz, Sheriff Coroner.
Thank you.
County of Santa Cruz in Santa Cruz County is a private company categorized under sheriff. Our records show it was established and incorporated in California. This is totally hush-hush. It's on the public record. It has to be. They're a corporation.
Okay, did you verify that at the Secretary of State's office?
I haven't yet.
That's how you verify it. If it doesn't show up at the Secretary of State's office, it's not a California corporation.
Well, maybe or maybe not. If they wanted to have
If
something...
it's on there,
If
let
they-
me know. I'll sue
Okay.
him. Because then he's a private. It's
Okay.
easier to sue a private
So-
corporation than a government.
Here's
Trust me.
here's a biz fund record on the county sheriff. number of employees, of employers unavailable. But a principal is this guy, Jeremy Verinsky, who was made a lieutenant in the sheriff's department last year.
It's a different address, though.
Verinsky?
That's the place, isn't that?
This is the
near
county,
Belt Street?
that's their
Yeah.
new location.
Is that where Wowak is?
No, it was 701.
I don't know. I
That's
thought
a
it was on
different
Belt
address.
Street.
This is 17th Avenue, this is the
It's on
17th Avenue Sheriff's Station.
Really?
The substation.
Where's
The
Wowak's
address
office?
is on 17th.
Okay,
It's
this
on
is
17th
Belt
and
Street, Felton, 17th.
Jeremy
It's
Verinsky.
Okay, that's where
Yeah.
we're at.
He's the principal at County of Santa Cruz. It's a corporate,
No.
that's a corporate title. This lieutenant is a corporate officer.
Uh-huh.
Lieutenant Robbins, director at County of Santa Cruz. Contact Steve Robbins, former sheriff, Lieutenant Robbins, director, and Mark Tracy, former sheriff.
I was told Steve Robertson no longer works there.
He's part of the corporation
No,
now.
but he's still
Yeah.
on the list as a contact for the corporation.
Look it up on the website, like I said.
This is the Who's This domain record for scsheriff.com. The website for the county sheriff now is scsheriff.com. The board of supervisors are a .gov. But
Really?
they have registered a .com address, and this guy is the administrative contact, who's a principal in this company. Okay, and Jeremy Verinsky, this is when he was, what do they call it, promoted last year to lieutenant. And here, Verinsky, a Santa Cruz High School graduate, attended Cabrillo College in Aptos and at Gavilan College, where he earned his POST certification as a peace officer. He has basic, intermediate, advanced, and supervisory certificates from Post, and is a graduate of the Sherman Block Leadership Institute. On promotion, Verinsky will be assigned to the Corrections Bureau main jail, which was exactly the same promotion path that Phil Wowak went through. And when Phil Wowak stepped in for Robbins, his jacket that they published was eerily similar to
So
this.
Mr. Verinsky's being groomed to take over for Wowak?
Apparently.
Should he be
I would
recalled?
suggest that
Apparently.
that's a possibility.
He's a candidate.
Well, that if we get the signatures, Wowak would then just quit and say, "Oh," and then they appoint this guy.
Ta-da,
You got
But
it.
if you can verify that this is really operating as a private corporation, we can stop that.
And this is
Oh, I like
information.
that. Let's do that.
This is information from Dun and Bradstreet,
Let's do that.
City of Santa Cruz. Is a private company. For $110, you can get all of their information from Dun and Bradstreet. And this is for the executive office, and the address for the executive office is near the old city.
Yeah, I'm not recalling the city.
So this is just one example of other things that are going on. This is an organization that does trainings for SWAT-type police activity, and they say that they've done over 200 trainings, and they have a list of all the companies that they've worked for.
Oh yeah, I talked to the president of that. He doesn't like the sheriff.
You talk to this,
The president of that,
Organization?
the county, the one in our county.
uh-huh,
I don't know if it's the same,
okay.
if it's U.S. deputy, I know the county's deputy sheriff's association.
So anyway,
That's who I talked to.
these
The union.
departments are being trained and they're developing these relationships with each other that are outside of the normal social networks that they would have in their county or in their jurisdictions.
Are you sure that's not the union there that you were just talking about?
The last one is a
Yeah.
private company.
Well, no, it's at a 501c3. It's a nonprofit corporation.
Right.
Which a union is a type of nonprofit corporation.
But that is not a union. That's an organization that does trainings for sheriff's departments.
Right, but they're not a for-profit corporation. If the other one that you were showing before with the Santa Barbara, that's the thing. If it's a nonprofit corporation, that makes it even more sketchy.
Right. Okay, so what is the situation that we're facing now?
We need to reevaluate the sheriff instead of recalling.
Many sources are
In
implying
public.
that this recall is for appearances only. That's appeared in the Sentinel. That's what Wowak was suggesting the
Yeah.
other night.
Yeah.
That, and even Jeff was saying essentially the same thing. We're just trying to get, some action here and get the sheriff to start saying something.
Yeah.
Well, these guys have plans. They have massive amounts of money and time invested into the program that they're pushing forward. It's not like you're going to talk to them and they're going to change the official
Put a banner up behind it.
The official consensus seems to be that the Santa Cruz County is entirely at the mercy of the CPUC's edicts, that their decisions trump law here, and whatever they say, no matter how dangerous it is or invasive it is, goes. And that's the position that Wowak's taking. The media, epitomized by the Sentinel, seem to agree that Sheriff Wowak's appearance at the Freedom Forum was a masterful expression of his candor, sound reasoning, and leadership.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's what they said in
The
the
Sentinel
editorial.
says.
Right.
yeah.
The Freedom Forum's getting press now. Cool.
Yeah, I wrote a letter in response to it.
But the sheriff well knows that the ban carries little or no authority, since local governments have no authority over PG&E, which is watched over by the state PUC. Wowak wisely has stayed out of the dispute and points out that the deputies have higher priorities than hauling in utility meter installers for just doing their job.
Oh my God.
Wowak was quick to say that he wasn't at the event to somehow turn the lights out on the recall effort. He said, yeah, recall me, please.
He said it twice.
Wowak,
But I asked him if I should
but
sue
it's a
him
lot
instead.
harder to demonize a public official after meeting with him face to face and hearing him answer questions.
Yes.
Not a public official,
Ron.
private corporation. If you
There
prove
you go.
that, he's done.
What reasons did Sheriff Wowak use for non-enforcement of 5084 before going to the Freedom Forum? This is what was printed in the Sentinel, who were trying to do a damage control from day one. Wowak said he has to prioritize limited resources, facing 100,000 annual calls for service and managing a short-staffed department. He said smart meter complaints are not as much of a priority as imminent public safety threats.
This isn't imminent.
I believe it's a very inefficient
Like
use
the
of
escape
resources
prisoners?
and dollars to arrest and give a criminal record to workers who are employed by either a contractor or PG&E for
Like
just
the
doing
lady?
their job.
Like they have to be
Well, as I
arrested.
said on that sheet that I passed out earlier, if it is an infraction to install a smart meter, it is also an infraction, and it probably is conspiracy
To aid and abet.
for them to task a worker working for them to go install the meters. They could very easily shut down the yard. They could have easily,
Oh,
with a
Bruce.
minimum of effort and a minimum of resources.
He could go down to the yard, issue them a warning, they'd have to leave
Oh,
the
yeah.
next day, cease and
Right.
desist. That would take one person, about the
Right.
time it would
It's-
take
it's-
to issue
it's garbage.
traffic.
Yeah.
We also want to look into whether or not Wowak has violated the act where you attend a meeting.
Brown Act?
Not Brown Act, the other one, the big one.
I decided
When they
to call
attend a meeting in private?
the sheriff.
Yeah,
Well,
it's the one that, what's his name violated when he went to the Bilderberg Convention.
Sentinel article?
that's a Sentinel.
Representing the country.
That's foreign stuff, that's, Logan
Logan Act is only
But
for
that has to-
foreign, and
Yeah.
ICLEI's not foreign.
Well, that's where you do that, that you do the
Okay, has
World
he ever
Bank.
been to an ICLEI meeting?
Okay, let's take a look at his
Yeah, but
performance
you
at
don't know what
the
that is.
Freedom Forum. What is the substance of his reasons for his actions enforcing 5084? Did he show up at the Freedom Forum courageously out of his leadership instincts and a considered and principled stand on the issues? Was he, in truth, as frank, open, and friendly as he seemed to represent and as the Sentinel has credited him for? Well, let's take a look.
Your County Board of Supervisors enacted a moratorium for the installation of PG&E smart meters in the County of Santa Cruz in response to their constituents, you. Unfortunately, the ordinance and the moratorium that the Board of Supervisors has enacted is the lowest level of legal recourse in the state of California, and it does not have jurisdiction over the California Public Utilities Commission, which is why I've directed my staff not to enforce the ordinance on PG&E installers, but to keep the peace,
Right.
So he's trying to keep the peace. That's his, I mean,
A
what about the
lower
peace of the
level.
people who have the meters installed on their walls? What about the piece of everyone who has to sleep at night knowing that all of their data is going into a federal database?
I can't even sleep at night because I'm itching all the time
That's
from
your
the
bed bugs.
thing that irritating my nervous system.
Well, what about the cost to people who are putting in a new water heater and it now has to be smart meter compliant, which is like, you know, all everything more expensive?
Yeah.
Really?
Water
Go,
heater,
folks.
dishwasher,
All new appliances
my-
are gonna have a chip in them.
It's good.
Rip the chips out.
At this point, we do not allow the blockade or the public access of anyone in public who is demonstrating, even peacefully, against installers. It would be very similar to if a group were to come here today and to stand outside the doors of the Grange Hall and to try and block you all from coming in here and having a public meeting. If you were to call us, we would come and we would arrest those folks for blocking your rights. And that is what we do when we're called to a public demonstration. Our role is to keep the peace. Now, I can't debate science. I'm not a rocket scientist. Everything that Josh says has great passion and great science to back it up. But that's not my role. That's not what I was elected for, and that's not what I do in law enforcement. I wrote a couple of quick notes so that I wanted you to know that I was actually paying attention and that I really do feel and understand your cause. I really do. I wish there was something more that I could do for you, but unfortunately we're probably going to have to agree to disagree. I can't use law enforcement resources to give a criminal record to an employee doing the job at the direction of their supervisor that is authorized by a state commission. Now, I understand your recall effort, and you have every right to do so, and you've done it very, very professionally. Okay, and I issued my 200-word response to the recall effort. I encourage you to use the recall effort in every way possible to get notoriety to your cause. But I do want you to know that the recall effort, in my opinion, okay, is a use of your resources that could be directed in a way to achieve your end and to get victory. If you were to use the combined effort that you have to run this recall and get this issue before a civil court judge, where it belongs. It doesn't belong in criminal court. This issue does not belong in making individual citizens of our county documented criminals. This issue belongs in front of a judge in a robe in civil court where he decides whether or not PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission has the right to do what they're doing in Santa Cruz County. Plain and simple, that's why I've chosen to act the way I have. Now again, I have to say, I'm probably not going to please you all, and I completely understand that. And that's why we live here. That's why we love Santa Cruz, that's why we live in America. We have that right. So having said that, I'd be happy to stand here with Josh and take any questions that you have. Again, I don't want to debate the science. I do want you to understand the resources that we have at the Sheriff's Office and what we intend on doing, and our mission is to keep the peace. I don't want any kind of passionate debate like this to become violent, and that's my role. Thank you.
Yes,
Wait, what did
violence.
you say? You sort of passed.
So,
To be,
So,
he doesn't
I don't
want
want
it
to
to be
become
what?
violent.
if there are allegations that these
Violence.
meters
Smart meter
have health
installations,
effects
violence.
on people that are under his protection, he may not be a scientist, but doesn't he have resources? Can't he
He has an obligation to.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
Don't you think?
yeah.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes, this last week, the county got what brings up to $6.5 million towards Homeland Security. And we see a lot of meshing of law enforcement, joint councils for the judiciary and so forth. And we're concerned about making the police local and not becoming nationalized police or letting the feds set the policy here. Is there some resistance among the local police chiefs and entities to remain local and defend their sovereignty?
I believe the Homeland Security funds that you're talking about were the grant funds that came locally to the different police departments for different infrastructure upgrades. And I was a recipient over the last 3 years of thousands of dollars of Homeland Security grants. So I can't answer the second half of your question, is there a unified effort to keep the federal government out and to stay localized? Because no, we cooperate very well with the federal government.
Yeah.
DC. conspiracy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you
Cooperate
win,
very
that right
well.
there,
Yeah.
get him out
What
of
is
there.
going on behind the scenes?
I believe that you should have the authority as law enforcement to enforce the federal constitution that you swore to uphold when you were elected to office. And so that's what I think we're asking you, is why you can't uphold that constitutional oath that you made when you were elected. If you can't, then we have no choice but to recall.
And that's, like I said, and that's, it sounds like a very ironic that I would be saying I'm not encouraging you not to recall me. Of course I don't want to lose my job. Absolutely. I'm telling you that I believe that collectively you can use the power and energy that you're using in the recall toward your end in a different and more successful manner.
He squirmed right out of answering
You
that.
can fight the federal government, PG&E, the CPUC, and all of these people who have been
World Bank.
planning for years to create this smart grid at a local level in the civil courts. That'll work, I'm sure.
Is that there's been speculation that and I think it's a strong word, but your impotence in failing to enforce this law is a result of political influence from above, and I've heard that from a number of quarters. And I'd just like to ask, has anyone from up top, whatever, called you and said, look, this is the smart meter thing, it's really important, we need it, just lay low on this one? Because that is the word on the street. That is the word on the street.
Josh, I couldn't be further from the truth. The folks that are up top are the Board of Supervisors who control my budget. I don't work for the Board of Supervisors. I'm independently elected like the Board of Supervisors, but they decide what money goes where in the county of Santa Cruz, and that would be the most influential folk. I have had no conversation with anyone with regard to this, and I stand by the reasons that I haven't enforced the ordinance.
Good observation up top. You see, he doesn't think he's sovereign in control up top.
Right. And who is really up top? It's not the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay,
earlier he was
so
telling us that-
what other evidence is there that there's a larger agenda? This is from 6/15. This is before the installation in the county started, which was in July. So, it says right here in the Sentinel article, at that time, those votes are largely symbolic. Shortly after this, Capitola passed their ordinance, and one of the council people from Capitola said, this ordinance is largely symbolic. And then Gail called Lieutenant Pursley down at the sheriff's office and asked him why they weren't enforcing the ordinance, and he said, well, it's a symbolic ordinance.
We're choosing.
The sheriff's department themselves.
We're choosing not to enforce it, to view it as symbolic. And you can we're allowing you to voice your opinions
You
online.
can voice your opinions online. That is special.
They
They're not UL approved. That's against California state law. Where are we at there? Are we gonna wait till people die? I can't go out and install any kind of electrical device I want that's not UL approved on a house. How come they're getting away with it?
The sheriff is the elected and head law enforcement officer of the county. You're absolutely right.
You have jurisdiction over the feds.
I do not have jurisdiction over
Yes,
this.
you do.
I have the duty, and I'm sworn to cooperate. I'm sworn to cooperate with them and to uphold the California state and federal constitution. I am not enforcing that ordinance because I do not have jurisdiction over it, as I told you, and I do not have the resources, and it is the inappropriate use of the criminal justice system. I can't answer it, just like Josh says, I cannot make a judicial decision on it. Okay, but you do have the right to opt out. That is a very, very appropriate and very effective way to opt out of having a meter installed.
The other thing is, I understand preemptive legislation, where there are certain laws that prevent lower laws from being enforced, and I think what you're talking about is preemptive legislation, is that correct?
Not only preemptive legislation, but I believe in the reverse. I believe that the Board of Supervisors is doing just that. They're sending a message to your legislators that it is time for them to act at the state level and to give them the authority to do so. Okay, and that's what I believe is happening here. And I cannot use my budget and my resources to further that cause. I am the executive branch of government, not the legislative branch of government and not the judicial branch of government.
Executive.
So he can't make any legal determinations, but he believes that the supervisors passed this ordinance, which he said was a response to you, the voters,
And it's
strictly to send a message to Sacramento.
Wait a minute,
Symbolic.
why is he part of the executive branch? I thought he's part of.
Because he,
No, the sheriff's
he's executive, he enforces.
They act to understand the Fourth Amendment violation that that constitutes.
I understand your argument that it could be a Fourth Amendment violation, and I wouldn't be the person, again, not the judicial branch of government, wouldn't be the person that would decide that. I appreciate you bringing that up, though, because Josh mentioned in his opening hour that part of the worry that you have about the transmission and the surveillance of the PG&E smart meters is that law enforcement will use that information. And I can tell you that that is not wholly true. Do we use PG&E information in some types of investigations? Absolutely. But we cannot get it without a court order that contains probable cause to get it. And we must demonstrate that to a judge and then hand that court order to PG&E to get that information. And that will not change whether you have an analog meter or a smart meter. And so that's the part of the data piece that applies to law enforcement.
Excuse me, don't you understand that the right to use surveillance against people in the interest of national security that was provided by the federal government has been almost exclusively used against criminals by the government? Almost exclusively.
Which question?
So you're telling me that because the law says that you can't use it without a court order, that is actually going to be the case?
Well, that is the case today, and that's the case in my 28 years of law
But
enforcement.
that's not what's really going on. And this is pervading the entire society, and it's coming down, and you're saying you're cooperating with the federal government. You're quite happy to do that.
Well, I can tell you that my office under no instances does any surveillance like that without proper court order, and that's what you've elected me to do. And I know that in Santa Cruz County that does not occur, sir.
surveillance, you
Except when he's working with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and they're going after things on a national security basis, and then they do warrantless searches. They do sneak and peek searches. These are warrantless searches, almost all of which have been used against drug dealers.
Have they been caught doing a sneak and peek in Santa Cruz yet?
How can you catch them?
Well, you know when you're placing.
sneaking. How do you know?
Yeah, sometimes they real stuff.
Well, the new head of PG&E is Anthony Early, and he came from the Detroit power grid, and he was part of an Agenda 21 national conference in which one of the Ford sons is in there, and they're talking about the eliminating cars. You have to get a car from the community if you're approved to be able to travel here and there. But also under his district is Detroit organization. He sold information of ratepayers to other people. He had call centers to the ratepayers, selling them insurance on appliances. They have no aversion of taking information. He had no aversion already. He's the guy that they brought in. He's tied in with the United Nations and the international community, and he's put here to put us down, and he's cooperated with the sheriff and other people and the Bilderberger newspaper to talk about that it is only a statement, it's not real law type thing. This is part of a deliberate program of which you caught right.
So his hands are already dirty in this precise way.
This guy's filthy.
And that would be the kind of thing, I mean, if you know it, Wowak certainly has the ability to find that out. So if he were actually protecting the people of the county, he would be doing his due diligence, and he would know that. He would know that PG&E has this guy involved in their project.
If anybody wants a copy of that, give me your email and I'll email it. That piece to you.
What are you afraid of would happen if you did actually go and chain up the yard and say this is actually illegal? What is the worst case scenario that you're afraid of? And because a lot of this is open to interpretation, and it sounds like you very well would argue that you do have a case for having authority over this. And right now what we're looking for is a community that's looking for a hero, someone who will take risks, who will challenge those ideas. Or the question is, are you looking to pass the buck and just duck this issue and be an ostrich? And that's what I'm making a decision. I wasn't planning on signing the recall, but from right now what I hear
And you're an elected official that's supposed to be a leader. I'm hearing an ostrich.
If I was an ostrich and ducking the issue, I wouldn't have come here tonight. I wasn't invited here. I found your forum on the web, and I read it in the paper, and I told my wife, who's sitting in the back corner, we're going. I'm not ducking the issue, and I'm not an ostrich, and an ostrich would not stand up here and say, no, I'm not going to enforce that ordinance. I'm telling you I can't. I said in the beginning we have to agree to disagree. What you're asking me, what would happen if we padlocked Wellington? You said it tonight. That's the Wild Wild West on steroids.
Was he invited?
Yes, it was on Stop Smart Meters.
Was the Freedom Forum meeting on Stop Smart Meters?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it
Yes.
It's been all over. It's
Yeah.
kinda crazy.
Was Wowak invited?
No.
We intended to invite him and it didn't happen. So,
I think Josh would have been better prepared if he'd have known he was coming, then he would have.
We all would have been better prepared.
Exactly. Exactly.
We dealt with the PUC. They are definitely on the side of corporations. Who protects us from corporate abuse? I want to know whether it's from Monsanto, PG&E, whatever corporation comes up with the nearest monstrosity. And I would like to just say that corporations, this is a history of business in this country. You put out your product, tell everybody it's safe, then the scientists do the studies, and after the studies are done and so many people are lined up as dead, then they decide to withhold or withdraw or whatever. None of us here want to be guinea pigs. So who is protecting our safety? The science is clear on this.
Doctor, I thank you for the question. I have the answer you won't be happy with, and that is, right now, the person that's in charge of regulating this issue is the California Public Utilities Commission. The woman sitting behind you, in both her question and her statement, gave you the other options that are there. There are recall options, there are options through your legislature, and I'm sure she has a number of others, having worked in the different fields that she has. And she brought out those answers from Josh as well. There are a number of others, but it's not the criminal justice system.
It's the sheriff.
okay, if we want the people of Santa Cruz to understand why it's truly important, we will need to come to grips to everything that's going on in this situation. It is big, 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 and it is global to local. It is coming down here from on high. And in order to get us where they want us, they must put these things and all of the related technology and the database technology and the enforcement technology all into place. It has to happen. They've been planning on it for years and years. It's a cannot fail mission for them.
Yep.
And we need to understand that what's happening with Sheriff Wowak is part of something much larger, and which I'm quite sure, quite confident, he knows about it and he's lying through his teeth. This recall only makes sense in the context of the complex globalist agenda. In order to gather 15,000 valid signatures for recalling Wowak, we will have to actively demonstrate to Santa Cruz voters that they need local sovereignty to protect their families. There's a time coming in which everything that we see on the surface is going to be overturned. One way or another, either we wake up and we reassert our sovereignty, or we are going into a very dark time. And we need to understand that we need to have that energy behind us in order to make this work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.